1, 2, 3.
Hello, welcome to Rock the Cash Bar. I'm Ben Mowbray.
And I'm Diane Gallagher.
Every week we pick one song and do a deep dive into the lyrics and explain the different ways they've been interpreted.
We will also discuss how the song connected to us on a personal level, focusing on all the embarrassing details.
Glad to have you here. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Cash Bar. How are you, Diane?
I'm doing good. I'm in a good mood.
This is we called an audible this episode. We were going to have one of our favorite guests on. We were going to have Greg Warren on. He's got a special coming out in a month, so we're going to have him on in about a month to coincide with that release, because this is a big time show here. And Greg Warren getting on the Cash Bar is going to do wonders for his special. It's going to pump those numbers through the roof for that guy. We got to hold it out.
Greg is so sweet. He was like, guys, I have a special. I want to, because, you know, he was just a Patreon draw. I'm like, you don't even have to come on. You can just give us a song. And he's like, no, I have a song, and it's a great, terrible song. Like Greg always is for us. And he's like, but I want to wait because I have a special coming out next month, and let's do it. And I was like, yeah, because this podcast is going to make or break your career. But by all means, let's hold off.
All right, we're going to say that it's a surprise, but it is an awesome, I'm saying this totally unironically, it's an awesome song from an awesome soundtrack that I listen to all the time. Like, absolutely no lie. I'm super looking forward to that episode. But this one, well, first of all, I wanted to say just a quick congratulations to former guest Zod Debji. Zod recently got a job as a writer on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. Like, no joke. He is a writer on The Tonight Show as we speak. Congratulations, Zod. Really well done.
So awesome. So proud of him. We
did Whiter Shade of Pale with him. It was one of my favorite episodes because he's a musician himself. Like, he's a classically trained pianist. So he actually got in and taught us, like how some of the songwriting works. And he taught me like how octaves work.
It's a great episode. And I love the story of how he found the song like on acid at a party at NYU. They were playing the video of Whiter Shade of Pale, and he just sat there and cried, and basically like the chick he was talking to was like, get out of my face. That was a great episode.
I just love that he's been able to do that. Like to be able to get to that. It's like, it's one thing to, like, for me to say like, oh, I was a professional stand-up comedian because I got paid $80 at a bar in Brenham, Texas once. I am a professional. I made almost $3,000 at stand-up comedy this year.
Yes.
Actually, like, to get a late night spot or to be a writer on a show like that, that just means that you're in the club. You're in the forever club. Like, you did it. Like you're. It's like it's getting into it's getting an at bat in Major League Baseball. Like, it's like you are a real thing now. You did it.
It's so crazy. Like, some comedians, their dream is just to do stand-up forever and, you know, sell arenas or be like Bill Burr. But I was always more on the trajectory of like, if I could use this to get a writing job on a show, that's it.
Yeah.
I want to write. So I'm jealous, and I'm so happy for him.
Yeah, congratulations, very well done.
Yeah.
So we changed up on the fly. We picked a song that I absolutely love. And I love the history of it. We picked "Where Did You Sleep Last Night" is the title. That's how it came to me. Like, the first time I heard this song was from Nirvana, from MTV Unplugged. They closed their show with it, and it was the most like arresting vocal performance I think I've ever seen. Like, it, I don't know how to describe like my relationship to Nirvana at that time. You know, like, when I was 11, 12, 13, 91, 92, 93, and then Kurt's death in 94 when I was 14. Nirvana was very much like cool kid music, and I kind of felt like I was on the outside of that, and they sort of slowly grew on me over the years that they were popular, you know, while Kurt was alive. And it really peaked for me with MTV Unplugged, watching them perform their songs in that really stripped down manner that was so popular at the time. My dad had the Eric Clapton Unplugged album, which really kind of put Unplugged on the map, or at least in the map in my brain. Right. And watching my dad listen to Clapton play all of these songs that I'd never heard the original versions of. Like Clapton on his album goes, see if you can spot this one. And then he goes into Layla. And the Unplugged Layla was a huge, big hit. That was the first, as far as I knew, that was the first version of Layla I had ever heard. I didn't realize that it was that soaring classic,
right?
You know, but watching my dad just kind of just like, oh, we can absolutely spot this.
Yeah.
And just watching the enthusiasm that he had for those songs, I was able to see Nirvana do that and have a little bit of an experience with it, like watching them play their stripped down songs, and then being introduced to new, like I would never have heard of the Meat Puppets, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
if not for that album. I never would have heard of Leadbelly if probably if not for him doing Where Did You Sleep Last Night. And that was just such a spooky way to close, because it's impossible to watch Kurt sing that song and not think about Courtney, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Especially what was going on in their lives. Like we did Nirvana episode 3 years ago when we first started this podcast. And I think we talked a lot about their relationship and stuff. But when I hear this song, and he actually performed this live with her, but I think his performance is so powerful on this because he's directly thinking about her.
yeah, yeah. I think he's directly thinking about her, but he's also, I don't think he did it deliberately, but I think he absolutely knew this is a classic folk song he did the, we're going to talk about it, but he did basically the Leadbelly version of it. There's many different versions of this song. He hewed really close to the Leadbelly version of it, so I think he was really trying to channel Leadbelly in a way, like he was trying to say like I am taking on a song by a legendary folk artist. I'm going to do my damnedest to put my own stamp on it. I'm going to do my damnedest to honor it, and I think he did a really really good job.
It's crazy. First of all, I just want to say there's a lot of things to miss about MTV, but I think the unplugs are the biggest. I mean, think about like 10,000 Maniacs, they're unplugged and how good that was. And it's always like a lot of covers that they do. And I wonder if like the audience that came to see Nirvana left being like, oh man, they just did a bunch of covers and only some of their hits, or if they knew what they had just witnessed, because it's the best, one of the best unplugs ever. It's one of the
Yeah.
best albums ever. I mean, I listen to the Nirvana Unplugged all the time, and I listened to it today while getting ready. And it's crazy because I've heard two different versions of the story, that when he did that song, MTV wanted him to do it again as an encore, and he was like, no, we got it. And then I heard another version where he thought he bombed because the audience was so quiet, and he didn't realize they were just stunned from what they just
Just
witnessed.
absolutely transfixed. Yeah, I read the version where he got off stage and they actually had an encore planned, and Kurt Cobain and the band were just like, we're not going to top that. Like
Yeah.
that was,
That's that's more believable because even Corbin was talking about it, and I went and watched the video again. There's this moment in the end when he just, before he screams the final verse, he takes this deep breath and he opens his eyes and it looks pained for a second, and then he just belts out this werewolf cry like Neil Young calls it. And you're just, when you watch it every time, it doesn't matter how many times you've seen it, you're just like, holy shit, that was good.
yeah, I get absolute chills listening to it, and it did send me back. Like once I got a little bit older and did a little bit of reading about it. This is when I went and sort of found Leadbelly and Lightning Hopkins and guys like that. And I tried to give myself like that background, and I don't have it. Like I'm not a huge big blues fan. I don't have the real knowledge of it. And honestly, some of it sounds so old that it's not daring anymore because so much of the music has been built on it. So you really have to kind of like put yourself in the mind, like, okay, what would it be like to hear this sound and this person and this music in 1920 or 1930 or something like that. And when you can do that a little bit, then it brings that danger sort of back into it. And when you listen to the Leadbelly version, you're just like, holy living shit. Like it's the
It's
story behind Leadbelly. Like we need to do a whole episode on him.
yeah. Yeah.
Like it's
Uh,
unbelievable. Like prison troubadour, like the absolute, like it's I hate using words like authenticity when it comes, but it's like here's what it is. Like
yeah.
this guy is literally singing the blues in Angola prison. He is recorded by the Lomax family. They're basically, during the 1930s, there were all of this government money in order to sort of fight the depression. There were all of these government projects that came out, and one of them was roots music and folk music. So the Lomaxes got this grant from the government to go around and start recording all of these local artists just to preserve American roots music. And they found Hughie Ledbetter was his name, Leadbelly, in Angola prison. And this guy was a 12-string guitar master. He had an absolutely wonderful voice. He knew hundreds upon hundreds of songs. they recorded him in prison, and that's how he got released. Like he was literally in jail for murder. They sent recordings of him to the governor, basically asking for clemency, and they got it. There's like, this guy
Incredible.
is golden voiced to be in jail for murder.
Do you know who Ted Hawkins is?
No.
Okay, we'll have to do an episode on him as well. Corbin just peed his pants because he's going to get so excited about that. He was another guy, and I wonder if he was part of the same thing where he was homeless. He was a homeless guy, like playing. I don't remember where, but somewhere like Venice. You just walk by, and he's so good that someone heard him and picked him up and was like, "We got to record all
Yeah.
this." And yeah, so we'll talk about that in another episode. But I wonder if it was in the same like vein. But this sounds way later. Ted Hawkins is way later than Leadbelly.
Mm-hmm. No, Leadbelly. I think the first Leadbelly recordings were in the mid 20s or 30s. Yeah, that was his sort of peak day. But it's I know I kind of get the chills when I think about a song like this, because it's not a Leadbelly original either. Like
No
this
one
song.
knows the original. I love when we do songs like this where it's just like they said it dates back maybe to the 1870s, and it's a mixture of like three different songs with three different components that get like some bands will mix these two components and some will mix it's like a little chemistry set of like which version do you want to mix together?
Yeah. And different sources. Like there are people who tell you that it's a Negro spiritual, that it's a plantation work song. And then there are people who tell you like, no, it's got roots in traditional like Scotch Irish murder ballads,
Yeah.
which is a really interesting thing to read about. Nick Cave has an album that was just called Murder Ballads. I thought it was a thing that he came up with, but it's not. What I was reading a book. It's called like The Origins of Crime, and it's about kind of like Elizabethan England, and because murder was extremely rare because you have to do it with your bare hands. Like there's no guns. Like if you're going to kill somebody, you need a tool. It's going to be exhausting. Yeah. Like
Knives
murder.
can be exhausting, yeah.
Yeah, you got to stab them to death. You got to beat them to death. You got to crush their head, somehow. Like it's a lot of work to kill somebody in those days. So they were exactly. So they were very, very rare. But when they would happen, like obviously it would be salacious. Like it would capture the public imagination. So there were these legendary murders and stories, just horrible things that had happened to people that would get translated into broadsheets, which were basically like the tabloids of the day. The memes of the day, the clickbait of the day, or they would have some like horrible story just written, and not everybody could read. So you'd have like the town crier or whoever would just read it to you. It would be this fantastic story of this murder that happened 3 or 4 towns over. And then as the story would be retold, it would make its way into song form, because that's how people remember it. It becomes easier to communicate if you're doing it through rhyme, if you're doing it through melody, if you're doing it through song. And that's where the tradition of murder ballads came from. So there were people who'll tell you that Where Did You Sleep Last Night, or In the Pines, or Black Girl, or The Longest Train, depending on which title of the song you go with, will tell you that it's a murder ballad, or the people will tell you that it's a Negro spiritual. And either way, nobody knows. There was a scholarly, like a musicologist wrote their PhD on this song in 1970, and she found no less than 160 different iterations of this song. So it's all over the place. So she basically said that in order to qualify like as a version of this song, it needs 3 things. It needs the In the Pines chorus, it needs the Longest Train verse, and then it needs like the confrontation with the decapitation and the confrontation. As long as you have those 3, right, then it becomes an iteration of this song. There's so many different versions of it. The decapitation is sometimes a husband, it's sometimes a girl. Like it's all over the map.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I can't believe this song isn't studied even more so. And we should do an episode on just murder ballads, like old folky murder ballads.
I totally agree.
Isn't that Rose Connolly's song, A Murder? Have you ever? Okay, we'll do that. That's a good idea, though. We're like coming up with ideas now for other episodes. We gotta do Leadbelly. We gotta do murder ballads.
I'm gonna do, because I am a man of a certain age, and this is how I came to the song. So the lyrics that we're gonna read and kind of focus on is the version that Kurt Cobain and Nirvana did in 1990.
That's what I have.
But I do have like the alternate verses and choruses and some of that stuff as well that we'll get into.
My girl, don't lie to me. Tell me, when did you sleep last night? In the pines, where the sun don't ever shine, I would shiver the whole night through.
So the lyrics are, my girl, don't lie to me. Tell me, where did you sleep last night? In the pines where the sun don't ever shine. I would shiver the whole night through. So it's like call and response. Like, is that two characters talking? Like, is it's the man
Yeah.
confronting the woman, and then there's the response?
Yes, for
I
sure.
think so too, but I'd never really thought of it that way. Like I always thought of it as like the guy just being just going insane. Like his girl's not there, his lover's somewhere else, and so like he leaves the house. Like that was the way that I originally thought
Oh,
of this song. It was just like he's just so frustrated and misses her so much. He's just like, I'm just going to be in the woods all night. Like I fucking can't sleep.
I never thought of that, that like he maybe was out looking for her and then
Yeah.
just
Mhm.
fell asleep in the woods looking for her.
Mhm.
I always thought of it, him asking her, and she's like, I slept in the cold woods.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I always thought the metaphor of she's dead. She slept in
Yeah.
the cold woods because she's dead.
Yeah. I didn't take it as metaphorical at all. Like since I did a little research on it, like obviously I think I understand now that it is metaphorical, like the pines or the cold place that you go in your soul,
Yeah.
you know. But I definitely took it as a literal thing, just like I couldn't stand to be around you anymore, so I just went to go sleep in the woods.
That's a married fight. I'm gonna sleep in my car. I don't even want to be here.
My girl, where will you go? I'm going where the cold wind blows. In the pines, where the sun don't ever shine. I would shiver the whole night through.
My girl, where will you go? I'm going where the cold wind blows. In the pines where the sun don't ever shine. I would shiver the whole night through.
Now all
Yeah,
I can think about is death.
yeah.
Yeah.
Bad things going on in this relationship.
I don't think they're doing well.
Things are getting dark.
Hmm.
Her husband was a hard-working man, just about a mile from here. His head was found in a driving wheel, but his body never was found.
Her husband was a hard-working man just about a mile from here. His head was found on a driving wheel, but his body never was found. I,
That's dark, man.
Mhm.
I don't even know what that looks like. I mean, I understand it's a train, and I'm like, so the train just ran over his neck on the track and then spun his head around the wheel. Like, what are we talking about here?
Yep.
Ew.
This it's the longest train. Like in the different versions of the song, they talk about how long the train is, and there's many different verses that are, sort of illustrate that. The longest train I ever saw was down that northern line. The engine passed by at 10 o'clock. The cab passed by at 9. So it's like it literally takes all day for the train to pass through town, is what they're trying to say. Metaphorically speaking, obviously the train is carrying people and things somewhere else. You've got all of this loneliness and isolation, and then you're decapitated, or you're one of the main characters in the song is decapitated by this thing that's taking other people away from it.
Yeah.
The metaphor is pretty darn right.
It's so dark. And I think about like those slow trains in small towns. Like, so my granny lived in a very small town in East Texas. Like, I mean, like population 400 people. And
Mm.
we would always get excited because she lived about a block away from the train track that would go through the town. And you'd always hear the brrr, and it felt like the longest train. It felt like you could hear that thing for an hour when it went through. So I connect exactly to what this sounded like and what this felt like.
Mhm. The sheer terror of it.
Hmm. Hmm. Trains are scary. Like I think our first introduction to how scary they can be was what's the movie with the little kids that go to see the dead body?
By me, Ray Brower, the back Harlow Road. Ask me
Yeah,
anything about Stand By Me.
Stand by Me. Yeah, and like because you think, oh, it's a train, it's far away, you got plenty of time, but that thing scared the shit out of me when the kids are running over that bridge because they can't slow down. They're just gonna kill you.
I was absolutely terrified. You know what didn't terrify me about Stand By Me? The leeches scene.
No, why?
Because where I grew up, we would go to this little resort that was called Half Moon Lake, and it was this really like super shitty lake that was no doubt just a slough. Like no doubt that the people who lived around there were just straight up dumping their sewage into there. But it wasn't like we would go swimming there, and it wasn't like, oh, you might get a leech on you. It was like, if you get in that water, you will have leeches on you. You will.
Did
It's a
you
fact.
did you put your hand in your pants like the kid and it's like on his balls and then he
I was
passed?
watching that scene, wondering like, what are you fucking crying about, you little wuss? Like, you have leeches on you. So fucking what? it's,
On
it's
his
a little
balls.
worse than a mosquito bite.
It's sucking blood out of his balls. He's never had that before.
We would put leeches on each other, like it was a fun. Like we would have like contest, like who could have the fattest leech.
So gross.
Not something we gave a shit about.
Oh, no, there was this one little pond lake thing that we would swim in at the deer lease when I was young, and I refused to do it because there was just perch, little perch fish that nibble at you. They'll eat the dead skin and pull on your hair if you have like hairs on your legs, and it doesn't hurt, but it's like hell no, no, no.
Well, I think that now, when I was 7, nope. There are leeches in the water. If you want to enjoy the water, you've got to enjoy the leeches. I've always said that.
Quote me on that. Yeah, we'll have to get back to these lyrics. But as a child, I loved lakes. As an adult, I'm like, no lakes. There's snakes I can't see. There's leeches and perch and alligator and I don't do lakes anymore.
You got to do glacier lakes. Have you ever been in a glacier lake?
I've been on like a rock lake, like a nice clean northern lake is different than the swamp lakes that we have here. What I hate the most about lakes is the muddy bottom when you step in it. All my brain can think of is that's what it would feel like to step on a bunch of wet turds at the bottom. That's all I can. I'm just like, it's turds. It's all turds. It's all shit. I can't. It's diarrhea and poop. I hate it so much. It's like where all the turds of the world have accumulated, and that's what you're stepping in.
This is turning into a gross foot fetish podcast. So gradually.
It's a very serious song, and I'm talking about stepping in poop.
There are many different iterations of this song. Like I said, the Kurt Cobain one kind of comes down from the Leadbelly family, but Leadbelly wasn't the first person to sort of popularize it. The first guy who did it was a guy named Doc Walsh, who was a banjoist, and that's the first sort of known recording of it, which is kind of fascinating to go like. Obviously, music has always been with people. Like we've always played music, we've always had our folk songs, we've always gone to dance halls. But the technology of being able to record it and take it home is very, very new. You know, like in some people's living memory. Like some of the first musical recordings are in the mid 1920s, and this was one of them. You know, Doc Walsh records this song in the Pines, and they literally like it's just because they can do it. Like there's no like real recording industry. They don't really know how the radio is going to work. They don't know how it's going to affect live shows or anything. All they know is that you have a chance to keep a record of what this person can do. So that became the thing that people were doing. Like
it's amazing. And this version, I went and I took clips of all the versions that we're going to talk about, except for like the ones that got recorded. Like everybody's covered it. Dolly has covered it. Everybody has. I didn't go that crazy, but this one I was listening to it and I was like, this reminds me of Astroworld music. Like I don't know if you remember, every time you walk into Astroworld and you just hear that banjo. Yep. That's what it sounds like.
I just like thinking back to the days when the banjo was daring and scary.
I can't imagine. To me, it's like Tex Avery cartoons and Astroworld characters.
You just see like mothers in the 20s, like, what's that sound? It's gonna rot your brain. It's
the devil's music.
Oh, exactly. The devil's in the banjo.
Mm-hmm. I like it though.
So after Doc Walsh records it, then a guy named Bill Monroe records it. And Bill Monroe was sort of seen as like the king of bluegrass music. So this is the real sort of like Kentucky Appalachian kind of white version of the song.
Very yodely.
Yeah, yodely and much sweeter. You know, it's more about missing your lover. And I think if I read it right, I think the Bill Monroe version actually leaves out that it has the train in, but leaves
Yep.
out the decapitation.
That's exactly what I have highlighted. He wanted to represent the longest train variant of the song and omit any reference to decapitations.
Yeah. So this is like his version is basically just about missing your lover and the
Yeah.
metaphor of the train kind of rolling, the long train rolling through town and taking everyone and everything that you love away from you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't have the darkness, it doesn't have the murder that Leadbelly, brings back into it.
Which I kind of like that this song, and it's almost like just an old folk tale. It's so versatile in this way that you can make it your own. Like, this is what he's like, I want to put this, he didn't say this, but in my mind, like, I want Christians to listen to this. He doesn't
Yeah.
want it to be dark.
Mhm. But it is dark. It's unavoidably dark, especially the Leadbelly version, because it's important to note Leadbelly, actual convicted murderer.
Who did he kill?
He killed a relative of his in a fight over a woman. Now, he was in a lot of trouble all throughout his life, but I don't think that he came by it really dishonestly. Like Leadbelly is a saloon singer. He would sing in brothels. He would sing, in red light districts in rough towns in Shreveport, Louisiana, in Houston in the old days, in New Orleans, right?
Yeah.
So if you're the entertainer, you can well imagine, because you and I have both done it. You walk into those places, there's definitely the attitude of, oh, you think you're funny? Prove it. You're going to try to entertain me? Prove it.
Yeah.
Like I have no doubt that happened. And Leadbelly got in all kinds of fights, all sorts of assaults, all kinds of stabbings, all kinds of murders, all based around that.
What a rough little underbelly world for Leadbelly.
Yeah, his nickname, he got it. They think that he got it in prison, but nobody really knows like what the origin of it was. Some people thought he was just so tough. He's got a lead belly.
Yeah.
Other people can tell you that when he was working on a chain gang, he was lazy, like he had a lead belly, so he would just like lay down when he was supposed to be working,
Yeah.
just like he had lead in his belly. He also escaped from a chain gang. Like his story is so exciting. Like he was arrested, put on a chain gang. He was only there for a couple of days before he just took off, and under
Dragging
assumed,
like five guys with him.
yeah, dragging five guys in the end, and the ball and chain and everything like that behind him in the classic black and white.
That's really funny. With banjo
yeah,
music.
exactly, like something out of Oh Brother Where Art Thou, except
Mhm.
real.
Mhm.
But he lived under an assumed name in Texas for a couple of years, playing shows and working as a laborer until the law caught up with him and sent him back to jail. And that's where he was discovered in Angola by this family called of musicologists called the Lomax family, who I believe there is a journalist in town named John Nova Lomax, who is kind of my dream guest for this podcast. He is a music writer for the Houston Press and an editor for Houstonia magazine. I believe that he's the grandson of the Lomaxes who found Leadbelly.
Holy shit. Get
Yeah,
him on the pod.
he wrote a long article about Johnny Nash that I based most of what I knew about Johnny Nash from that episode. He wrote a long article about him in which he alludes to his family, being musicians, musical historians going back several generations.
So it sounds like
Well,
it.
have him on the podcast to talk about Leadbelly if he would do it.
All right. Maybe I'll try to use my charm.
We'll start beating the bushes for John Nova Lomax.
We're gonna
We're
get
coming
you.
for you, Johnny.
We're gonna get you. When I want something, I get very determined.
He also wrote a book maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago about Houston dive bars. It's just a long of hundreds and hundreds of local dives. It's a fantastic book.
Oh, that's great.
Little girl, what have I done to make you to make you time at me so? Am I reading that right? Little girl, what have I done to make you tire at me so? You have caused me to weep. You have caused me to mourn. You have caused me to leave my home. So there's always a moment in this song where the singer, the male, is confronting the lady for her lack of loyalty,
Yes.
for some manner of transgression.
Yeah, it
And then,
always seems like she's cheating. That
mhm.
this song is so disjointed to me, but I don't care. I just go with it. It's like she's cheating, someone's sleeping in the woods, someone gets their head run over by a train. I don't know how they go together, but that's
Yeah,
what.
and it's different. Like sometimes it's the woman's head. Sometimes it, like in the Nirvana versions, her husband was a hardworking man, and it's his head that's found on the driving wheel. So sometimes you wonder, like okay, well, who's cheating on who?
Yeah.
Like it certainly sounds like the protagonist of the song, for lack of a better word, might be in love with a married woman or sleeping with a married woman that he can't have, and now he's being driven crazy because she's back with her husband. So he either decapitates her or decapitates the husband, depending on the version of the song.
Or there's a suicide aspect to it. Like people would have suicide by train. He went and laid his head on the train track. There's yeah, that was another thing that people would do. They jump in front of trains, which I'm like, God, there's so many other ways. What is wrong with people?
There's easier, more peaceful ways to kill yourself
Ugh.
if you don't do that. Like, that sounds absolutely scary. One of the scariest things I ever saw on the internet was one of those, like, it happened in Russia videos. And it was a
Oh.
kid who's like literally laying on the train tracks. The train is going right over top of him. So that's scary enough. But then you slowly realize that his plan is to roll out from under the train, like in between the train's wheels. And you're just looking at it, just like, no, kid, don't do it. Just don't. It's scary enough just to let the train go right over top of you. Please don't do it. Please.
Did I tell you before we get completely derailed? Like when I was in kindergarten, I got hit by my school bus. Do you know the story?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and it's so long ago, and I was 5, and I honestly, there's part of this story, you know how your brain, your memory doesn't serve you, it doesn't work well. And I don't remember if this part is true or not, but I remember telling people at the time is that it hit me, I went down, and then, you know, buses take off slow, and it went over me, but I mean, I was little and on the ground, and
Yeah.
I feel like I remember thinking there are cars behind this bus that aren't big and I got to get out. And I rolled out between the second set of wheels before it came onto the street.
Oh.
I swear to God, that's what I remember. And I
Yeah.
think that's what I told people. But as an adult, there's something in my mind going like, did that happen? Or did it hit you and you get up and walked away? Because I also remember we lived in a trailer park, and at the front of the trailer park was the house where the landlord lived, and the teenage son was in the front yard and saw the whole thing. And I remember him laughing at me. I remember him thinking it was funny that I got hit by the bus, which makes me think it just hit me and I got knocked down and I got up and walked away. Because
Yeah.
if it went over me and I rolled out before the wheels came, I don't think he'd be laughing at me unless he's an absolute sociopath. So part of me is like, did I dream that part, or is that part made up? I don't know. I just don't know.
You're just romanticizing your bus hit.
I wish I knew. I want to call my mom and be like, what did I tell you happened that day? Because that was probably the truth, like immediately after it happened.
I've never been hit by a bus.
I didn't break anything, but I do remember the bruise. The bruise I had like on my like butt hip was purple. I mean, just purple. They rushed me to the hospital to see if anything was like fractured, but it wasn't.
The luckiest bus hit ever.
Yeah, you know, when I put this in post production, I do the lyrics like in little chunks, and then I add the music in little chunks, and I have to have a part where we stop and put in like his scream at the end, because we stopped basically talking about Nirvana's version because it was just the same thing over and over after that, like the same verse. So at least right here we have to take a moment and enjoy Kurt's final screams.
My girl, where will you go? I'm going where the cold wind blows. In the pines, south, the shine, I shiver. Oh, not
Okay, we're back.
You're right, though. It's that big breath that he takes towards the end of the song, where like that big exhale, it really kind of like just draws you in. And like I said, like I can't listen to Kurt Cobain sing that song and not think about Courtney and not think about the torture that he must have.
Yeah.
Like, clearly, that's got to be one of the reasons why he was drawn to this song, is because of the volatile relationship that he was in with his own lover.
Well, I don't know what you had in mind as far as like sequence of events talking about this, because you talked about Doc Walsh and then Bill Monroe, and then because the timeline of the official recordings was Doc Walsh in 1926, Bill Monroe in 1941, 1944 Lead Belly, 1964 the Four Pennies did a
Mm,
version that went to number 20 on the UK charts but did nothing here. And they
mm,
called it Black Girl. That's another version, is that it's also called Black Girl. And I'll play all these later, but that's actually a very good version.
mm,
But then 1990, and I didn't realize what role Mark Lanigan played in this, but Nirvana did Mark Lanigan of the Screaming Trees. We talked about him a lot when we had Mishka Shubaly on. You know, he
mm,
was friends with him and edited his autobiography, which we're going to talk about later with Jeremy. But he is the one that was super into Lead Belly, and I think got Nirvana into Lead Belly. But he did a solo album called The Winding Sheet and had Kurt Cobain and Chris Novoselic on it, and Kurt singing in the background. So I think
mm.
he's the one that got Kurt really into Lead Belly, and they recorded their version together in like 1990, and then Nirvana did this unplugged in 1993,
Mhm.
which is like, it's weird. Like when I at the end when we do our deep cuts, I want to play all these versions in order so you just see like how a song has evolved over time, which is
See
really
the
cool.
progression of it, yeah. You
Yeah.
see how I guess that's what fascinates me about songs like this is how they sort of tumble through history and tumble through time and tumble through minds and tumble through souls. You know, like
Yeah.
it's like it gradually gets passed on, you know, one from another. Like you could see, you know, Leadbelly sitting at somebody's knee, you know, like listening to this song for the first time and then, you know, learning his own interpretation of it. Like, let me show you these chords.
Yeah.
Like it's just nice to see the old ways that these things were passed down. Like it's literally from knee to knee, you know, from stoop to stoop, from stage to stage, from live show to live show. There was no other way to do it. We didn't have recordings. We didn't have, you know, tab sheets. There was no Guitar World magazine. Like
Yeah.
you literally had to learn it from some guy.
Yeah, it's really cool. I wonder, like, it starts in 1926, the official recordings, like, what is the 2096 version gonna sound like? Someone's gonna redo
Mhm.
it. This is one of those songs that's just gonna keep living.
Yeah, it's going to keep going. Yeah, and you also see like the genesis of like it's hard not to read about Leadbelly and not see like the direct parallels between him and someone like Tupac. You know, like you totally say like this has always been like if you're a black artist, you're going to get yourself in some trouble. Like the world is just going to cause trouble for you or you're, whatever. You know, like the little bit of trouble that you're going to cause in the world is going to come back on you so much more just because of the nature of who you are.
Yeah.
And then you have music geeks and artist geeks like you and me. They're just like that, just crave that authenticity. You
Yeah.
know, like it doesn't count unless you actually learned it in prison.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't want it overproduced in a studio. I don't want you just going for the hook. I need a story. I need feeling. I need emotion.
Yeah, I need to know if you're going to sing me the blues, I need to know that it's actual blues. I
Mm.
don't need you to just be normal sad. I need you to be proper distressed.
Yeah. And it's funny that we're talking about authenticity in the blues, and then our favorite, not our favorite, but the version that kicked the door down and got all this in our head is, a white boy
Yeah.
on MTV. But he does such a good job. I swear, like if the old folks from the 1800s that were singing this could get catapulted into the future and watch Kurt Cobain sing this on stage, I think they would be like, he gets it.
Yeah.
He gets it.
And it is. I mean, you have to acknowledge it. Like that's just the way that music gets passed along to people like you and me, sheltered white folk. We need Elvis to bring us black musicians. We sort of it's just the way the world is set up. Like I needed Kurt Cobain to bring me Leadbelly.
I'm
That's
sorry.
just the delivery system.
But
I
it got
like
us
it.
to Lead Belly, right?
You get as long as you get there eventually, I think.
There you
I
go.
think it's intention. But yeah, I really do want to do a full-on Lead Belly episode because his life is just so sprawling and so incredible. Like it just
He did, and I remember looking at this in our research when we did House of the Rising Sun. Like his version of that is extremely, it's
Mhm.
everything he does, and it's also just the style in which they recorded it. It sounds so dusty, and it's just him and
Mhm.
his guitar, but it's haunting. It's like
Well,
every,
it's his guitar and his literally slashed throat.
yeah.
Being stabbed in the neck doesn't do something to your singing voice.
Yeah, it's I don't know if he purposely picks haunting songs or if they're haunting because he's singing it, but
Because he's a haunted man. Yeah. Like
yeah.
I think it just comes straight out of his heart.
Yes. There's another version by, and I don't know how to say it. It's Kossoy, Kossoy, Kossoy. It's a folk version by the Kossoy sisters, and their version says, little girl, where'd you stay last night? Not even your mother knows." And the reply to the question is, "Where did you get that dress and those shoes that are so fine?" From a man in the mines who slept in the pines. So that's another dark version. Like, what's this little girl doing with this mine man in the pines? And there was a story about how some Georgia governor a long time ago would release prisoners to go work in the mines. And so, yeah, it just leads you to believe she's getting molested by some prison miner out in the woods.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sugar daddy prison miner.
Oh, bully. Just gets darker and darker.
Ugly things happen out there in the big nowhere in America.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I want to talk about just back to the quote from Neil Young. Like, so many people were affected by Nirvana's version when they saw the Unplugged. Like, there was a poet that had something to say. What poet Allen Ginsberg was just saying that he had great vocal control and subtlety and almost as good as Leadbelly's. But I like Neil Young's quote where he was just like, they said he was just deeply affected by it. And he said the tortured final vocals sounded unearthly like a werewolf. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good description.
And it like for all of the like I'm 43 years old. Like Nirvana was big, like I say, when I was 11, 12, 13, 14. So they're a big imprint on me. Of all the great songs that Kurt had and all the great moments that he had, I think Where Did You Sleep Last Night is his absolute peak. Like when I think of Kurt Cobain, I think of that wail at the end of Where Did You Sleep Last Night. I don't think about Smells Like Teen Spirit. I don't think about Come As You Are.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
this is,
Yeah, you're right. He did so many songs in between. Like I remember I mean I loved Nirvana when they came out. It was like nothing we had ever heard. Smells Like Teen Spirit was nothing we had ever heard. And then he did all this stuff in between that it was fine. Like Heart-Shaped Box never did it for me. I don't know, something about In Utero. I didn't love everything there. But then this was like near the end. And so I think of Smells Like Teen Spirit and I think about this Unplugged album. And I'm like, that's quintessential Nirvana
yeah,
to me.
that's who he was. And it's so weird to go back and look at it like now that we're so much older than he was then. Like to
Yeah.
look at him and say, you're just a kid. Like you are
Yeah.
just a kid, and you did all of these amazing things. Like, and you're like, I mean, a baby. Like he was
They
only 7 years old.
they were little kids. I go back and watch that Unplugged and Dave Grohl looks so young. I mean, because
Yeah.
they were, but I mean, just, Dave Grohl has stayed with us and he's been such an accomplishment. And yeah, I'm like, man, they were just little big kids
Mhm.
making this
I thought it was a
amazing shit.
crowd. Like when you watch that, like I remember watching it when I was a kid, like when I was 13 or 14 watching it, and I thought everybody in the audience was a grown-up adult. Like I watch it now, I'm just like, no, those are just teenagers. Like
Yeah.
I don't know, it's mind-blowing. I don't want to get any older, Diane.
I don't either. My God, when is it gonna stop? I mean, I used to love celebrating my birthday. I was that annoying bitch that was like, "It's my birthday month," and now I'm like, we can have a nice, quiet dinner and don't tell anybody how old I am.
Yep.
It's just so sad. There's this thing, I'm sure you've seen it. It gets passed around the internet where someone photoshops the young version and the old version of an actor, like almost like in an embrace, and it looks so realistic, like they're two different people together. Like Leonardo DiCaprio is a popular one where like the older version's hugging him. And I think we're supposed to like love it, and it makes me morbidly depressed. I'm like, no aging. Oh, but my friend sent me this thing today on Instagram. It's so messed up. It's a picture of Roseanne Barr now next to a picture of Madonna now, and it's like, if you would have told me back in 1989 that Roseanne Barr was going to be hotter than Madonna in 2033 and the picture they're put side by side, you're like, holy shit. But it's the version of one who's decided to age a little gracefully, do little touch-ups over the person who lost their mind over aging, and you're like, whew. Take note, ladies. Like, do what you can. I had a painful laser procedure. I mean, do what you can, but don't go crazy.
No, embrace it. I like the white hairs in my beard. It makes me feel like a wizard.
Ben, I was plucking my eyebrows getting ready
Uh,
for this episode, and I keep finding white hairs in my eyebrows. What is that?
Nothing you can do about it. It means you're cultured.
You get rid of them is what you do about it. It was only a couple, but I'm like, what is that? Why are they in my eyebrows?
Be grateful for every line on your face. They're laugh lines, Diane. Stress eyebrows.
All right.
That's in the Pines. Shall we see who did Jeremy connect this through?
So I am going to preface this and say, Jeremy, apologize. There's a few blips in this one where his voice drops out for a second, but you can still get the gist. But he does a cool thing. He takes us on a little bit of a different adventure this time. So let's watch together.
We're going on a musical journey.
Friends, and welcome to the More You Know edition of 6 Degrees, where this week we're going to connect the Clash to the song Where Did You Sleep Last Night / In the Pines. And while I'm sure Ben and Diane the Nirvana cover, which made the song familiar to our generation, I'm sure lesser familiar to why Nirvana picked that song. According to his autobiography, Sing Backwards and Weep, Screaming Trees frontman Mark Lanegan said the song initially came out where Lanegan, Kurt Cobain, Chris Novoselic, and Screaming Trees drummer Mark Pickrell attempted to do a whole album of Lead Belly covers. The album failed partially, according to Lanegan, because both he and Cobain had an inability to take reins. According to Lanegan's book, it wasn't until years later that I realized Kurt didn't take lead out of respect for me. Part of me knew he saw me as sort of a big brother, but I struggled to get my head around that. I felt like the Screaming Trees work was second rate, everything dragged out or cobbled. Satisfying song, the result of too much soil. I saw everything through that prism. It was impossible for me to accept that someone else could find worth in what I did because I could not. A version of Where Did You Sleep Last Night from those sessions would appear on Lanegan's debut, where both he and Cobain took turns sharing lead vocals. So when Nirvana decided to cover the song 4 years later on Unplugged, Cobain asked Lanegan to join them, but Lanegan declined, writing that he felt he was second rate and it would be awkward for him to come out better known band. Oh, and that connects to the Clash because Dave Grohl has played with everyone and played every song, including playing with both Mark Lanegan in Queens of the Stone Age and, of course, in Nirvana. And then he did a cover of Train in Vain 2021 because Dave Grohl. Actually, that's not the point. Really, if you have a chance, you should check out Lanegan's autobiography or his books of poetry. They're really great reads. And that's our Reading Rainbow edition of 6 Degrees, where we went in a very long way. Roll to the Clash. Back to Diane.
I am going to immediately look up Dave Grohl's version of Training Day. But that is an awesome combination of song and singer.
Yeah. And yeah, once again, just to remind our listeners, we had Mishka Shubaly on when we did Guns N' Roses, and Mishka was very close friends with Mark Lanegan and edited his autobiography.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Mm-hmm. Well, there it is.
All right, so deep cuts this week. I was going to go with this one song, but then I was like, why would I do that when there are so many deep cuts within the song itself? So what I'm going to do is play little clips in order. Doc Walsh's version, Bill Monroe's, Lead Belly, and then Mark Lanegan with Kurt Cobain. So those are going to be the 4 deep
Perfect.
cuts.
Now, darling, don't tell me no lie. Where did you stay last night? I stayed in the pines where the sun never shines, and I shivered when the cold wind blows.
In the pine where the sun never shines, and we shiver when the cold wind blows.
My girl, don't lie to me. Tell me, where did you sleep last night? Come on, tell me, baby. In the pines, where the sun don't ever shine. I was shivered all night too.
right. Next week. So I think this is our guest. Him and I planned this like a month ago. And then I texted him this morning to be like, hey, are we still good to record next week? And I haven't heard back. So I think, we're going to have a guest that's not a comedian, but he's very funny. And he's an ex-NFL football player who played for the Houston Texans and the Jags. And he is the co-host of Payne and Pendergast on Sports Radio 610. We are going to have Seth Payne as a guest.
I am so excited about that. I used to listen to Seth Payne on the radio. For hours. When I work construction, just going from job site to job site, I listen to Seth Payne all the time. He's not your typical football player radio broadcaster. He is an unusual dude. I'm really excited to talk to him.
So I think the song that we're doing is Paradise by the Dashboard Lights. Is that what it was? When he first said that, I was like, okay, let me Google the song Paradise by some band called the Dashboard Lights, because I don't know shit about Meatloaf. I immediately was like, oh no, that whole thing is a Meatloaf song. Oh, we're doing Meatloaf. Okay, got it.
No, I'm excited about it. Like, I need to understand the appeal of Meatloaf. I don't get it. I never have.
I don't know if he likes it either, but because he had said he has like a whole thesis on why the song was what did he say? I sent you the text. Bad I forgot the word.
Tactics.
Yeah, something like that. So we'll let him explain it, but yeah, I'm excited. And we'll have Greg Warren next month.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that. Greg Warren, you're blasting towards the Five Timers Club.
Yeah. All right, we're done.
Love you. Thank you for listening. And Vogue.
1, 2, 3.
Rock the Cash Bar is produced by Diane Gallagher. Music by Chuck Savage and Eddie Hawkins. Special thank you to Jeremy Essig for 6 Degrees and to Sarah Wessling for the Guilty Pleasures vocals. Our website is rockthecashbarpodcast.com, and there you can find links to our Spotify playlist and to our Patreon. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week.